The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Katrine Bach, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi Katrine, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm super happy you're here with me today, and I've been looking forward to speaking with you for a long time.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure.
I think it's going to be fun, and it's also going to be a different topic because you are the co-founder of Connected Women in AI, and I never do this, but now I'm going to allow you to just tell us a little bit about what is that all about.
Yeah, with great pleasure. And I'll make it relevant to the audience, not just talk about us and what we want to do. But to me, Connected Women in AI is very fundamentally about participation. And basically what we are looking at for AI now is that it's not a specialist technology where you need to be an expert or data science educated or something. It's becoming a general capability that we basically all, regardless of what we do, need to be able to use, and we even expected to use it in our everyday work. So what we are seeing, and unfortunately that's something that repeats itself in history, but we see that there's much less adoption amongst women when it comes to AI, so the usage of AI, than men. So the adoption gap is up to 40%. Our own data from Denmark says 30% adoption gap. So women using AI less. And then you have, as I said, less women also in and working directly with AI. And again, that's a historical thing. So
like engineers and data scientists. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm.
And we have less women educated, and we come from a place where maybe that was a bigger problem to address. But now when we're talking AI, it's not really, because the capabilities that we need, the skills that we need, the competencies are so broad now that it's not about being educated, very specialist. That's what I mean when I say that it's no longer a specialist technology. And Connected Women in AI is existing to close the gap, really, to really make history, make sure that we enter into this tech revolution with gender equality. And that would be for the first time in history. So personally, I'm super motivated by making that change. But I feel that it's something that we all need to be concerned about, and I'm sure we'll elaborate more on that during this conversation. But basically, what we are doing is trying to create more concrete entry points in terms of community, in terms of upskilling opportunities, in terms of hands-on possibilities to engage with technology, and then of course create visible role models, make sure that we share all the women that actually are in AI and use AI to inspire. So that's how we started. That's the motivation to create more diversity broadly, and starting with women and making them use the technology, because once you're more comfortable with using it, you also start becoming more comfortable with shaping it.
Yeah, but that's right. So then you need to start working with it to understand what it can do and how you can actually also influence the evolution of it, right?
Yeah.
But you said it's first time in history. You said that just before. I listeners of the podcast will know that I'm actually an educated historian. So of course I'm like, what do you mean when you say first time in history? What do you mean by that?
I mean, we've just gone through technology revolutions before, and where women have typically sort of sat a little bit on the sideline because it was perhaps more specialist technologies that were required when we were going through those revolutions. And what I mean here is that this is more of a renaissance than a revolution. It's a complete upside down of society, really. And with the development that we've seen since 22. We've gone to realize that the need for value adding with AI is very much about getting it applied, and it's very much about understanding and communicating, making sure that we have the sort of human in the center, and all of those competencies, they are broadly shared.
Like you said, this is a general purpose technology basically, but you can also call it a democratic capability, right? So that means also we need to have, that's the point, right? Democratic representation as well, right?
Yes, we talk a lot about democratization of AI. Absolutely. Yeah.
So and everyone's talking about that. That's also the wet dream for the technology providers in Silicon Valley and across the world, democratization of these things. But aren't they missing out then on the democratic representation that you're then bringing to the table? Or do you see the big tech providers already providing something in this vein, or?
What, to engage or to encourage women, do you mean?
Exactly.
Or diversity?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm not sure that they do, actually. And I think what we typically talk about here is the need.
They want it democratic, but they don't want it democratic.
Well, you want it democratic because that's the right thing to say, but do you actually do you change
what it means?
And do you make any behavioral change or systemic change, right? And it's a systemic change that we need here, because when I'm looking at women and my experience from the last 1.5 years since we started, and it's not even 1.5 years since we started Connected Women in AI, we've had women being so interested, pouring in, right? We have 7,000 community members now, and women are interested. Women want to engage. So it's about providing the right structure for it, I think, the right possibilities. And there's a lot here to talk about. There is, what are the perceptions that women sit with? So that's one thing. But there's also what is being offered. And we're seeing, again, from our research, and that would be just, again, in Denmark, that women are also being offered upskilling and training in AI less than men. So when we talk about the systems, there's a lot that can be done, but it's a big job. It's a big shift, and it requires the CEO, for a start, to think differently.
Exactly, to get people, get them involved, and also not just get them involved, like saying that now we have. We've hired some, right? But saying, how do we make sure that they also heard in these? Because I want to get to that, and I'm going to get to that in a later question, because I want to also ask you what this is all about, or why is this important. But first of all, I'd like to know, what are some of the because you said role models as well, right? So what are some of the stories from your community that resonates? Or maybe some of the bad stories, or some of the good stories as well?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, there's always good role model stories, but people also tend to know those ones. I think what
Everyone's always saying they're doing great, right? Every company is doing great with AI, but are you really?
Exactly. No, I think that the stories that I would like to put forward, and that goes very much to our purpose, right, is back to actually what I mentioned before about how fast we can engage women. It requires very little. And I have one woman, and she came to one of our volunteer meetings, and I was encouraging everybody to engage. And I actually think she listened to a podcast. That's it. And then she came to a volunteer meeting, and she was like, I listened to a podcast, and I decided to just take the jump because I've been looking at this and I want it. And she quit her job. And then she started looking for AI jobs and upskilling herself. Very low, skilled, but with a lot of enthusiasm, because I also think that a lot of women think that we need more knowledge and experience and all of that technology-wise. But anyway, now she sits as head of AI adoption of a very large pharma company. And we're talking 1 year, right? I mean, she got a new job within 3 months, and she's head of the whole adoption effort. So that's one thing. We had another woman from one of our training courses, and she came in and raised her hand and said, look, I just want to say that I've not even used ChatGPT. I'm completely blank, right? And for Stara, I want to say very few women will say that in a room where there's men and they're feeling judged and all of that. But, being in a room of women. She's gone back and is leading now also within, they stopped 4 months ago. They came out of the training program, and now she's leading one of the big AI initiatives for Copenhagen Airport. So, I mean, it's just, it's so fast, right? We can make an impact really fast. Just welcoming women in, and there's a lot of value add for that. And when I talk to the businesses, I'm trying to make them understand that this is not about equality. This is not the point of it. It's also about being competitive and making sure that we activate the entire talent pool, and it's about the quality of what we're doing.
You want adoption, right? You're saying you want adoption, you want positive adoption. Well, how about, you enable half of the people in your company, maybe,
exactly. Do you know what? I mean, I'm at all of these AI conferences, and the one thing that the only constant in those,
not yet,
but it is they keep repeating the need for resources, right?
Yeah.
I mean, skills and resources. So, and I'm like, guys, have you tried and look at that you have 50% of your talent mass that you haven't activated yet?
It's like back to the, in history, the Sputnik effect, right? The Russians went to space before the Americans, so the Americans sort of like, what's going on? So they started enabling the women workforce too, because that was a hidden intellectual capacity in the US, right? Yeah. So they outcompeted the Russians through that. So there's some stories around that. That's a good story around it, right? I also want to mention some of it. I thought, funnily enough, recently I had a conversation with a woman in technology, and this reminded me of, have you seen that image, 100 years old image, something like that, I think, or 110 years old, of the first Danish female minister in the government, the first government official, right?
Yeah.
They had a meeting, and someone had to serve the coffee, and she was there, and she was a woman. So she's walking around serving coffee for all the men, but she's also a minister, right?
Yeah.
And the conversation I then had now recently, just in the last 2 weeks, with this woman in technology, was that she had been in another company before, where she'd also been, a software engineer. But she said they had been like, oh, but you're a woman, you're a pretty woman. So they expected her to be more like, maybe throwing things up on the board or being interested in that flirt. And when she didn't want to do that, they were like, okay, we don't need you then. They weren't interested in her software engineering skills, in 2020. stuff, right?
But I mean, I've got stuff to say about this because this happens again and again. And you'll see Barbara, my co-founder. I mean, she'll tell a story about she sits in an AI consultancy as head of adoption, and she's got lots of stories with how she's bringing a male intern, and they assume that he's the senior, because he's a man.
And she's serving the coffee.
And she's the intern, right?
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, it's just that assumption. And we see also there's been, I was talking to a journalist, there was a lot of articles written, I think it was a year ago, about how it happens in the educations as well. So when we're looking at doing group work, and it's on programming, so it's really the specialist education. And what is happening is that the boys, they're doing the programming, and the girl is taking notes. So they're in the same course, right? They want to learn the same things. They have the same interests, but basically, the roles they just fall like that. And I don't think that it's, again, any evil intentions from men, but it's a little bit the system that we have right now. And that's why I'm talking a lot about the systemic change that we need to make, right? Because we need to realize that we actually do live in a society or in a system where men have been the majority of the input for a long time.
So now this is. Okay, sorry, I'm pausing myself because I'm wondering how I can ask this question, because I'm also, I'm a white affluent man as well, right? And in AI, and I'm everything that's, I want to say, I really want to say that I'm not the problem. I
believe you.
Which everything he says, not all men, right? I get all of these weird connotations. I know all the stories, the feminist. But the point is, when you say it's a systemic thing, it is actually also the paradox of dogs. It's also the thing that if there's a hardcore engineering course at the Danish Technical University, there's 95% men, and if there's a hardcore engineering course at the Technical University of Denmark that also has design at the end, then it's 95% women, right? And that's not because anyone's forcing the women there. Mm-mm. It's like herd mentality. It's like the big, societal bias, right? That's just what we do. This is it's Google saying that in Danish we say min kæreste is a nurse. Then it will translate my girlfriend is a nurse. Yeah. If I say min kæreste is a doctor, it will say my boyfriend is a nurse. Is a doctor because men are doctors, women are nurses, right? So this is just also in the machines, right?
But what is so interesting, and I mean, just before Christmas, I wrote an op-ed for one of the newspapers here in Denmark about this LinkedIn experiment. Did you? I mean, do you know? Yeah. So basically, what is happening is that there's a woman in the US. She's changing her gender in settings on LinkedIn, and then immediately she gets like way more visibility, like 400% up. And then what happens is that goes viral, and there's a lot of women that do this, and there's men that's changing in the settings to female, and then their exposure goes down, and then everybody gets super upset about it.
But if she puts a picture of herself on it, then it's okay, right? If she's pretty. But that also happens. That's another thing.
Yeah, but you know what? No, but the thing that I want to say about this is that people then get very angry, right? Yeah. So this is about, oh my God, and women are being down prioritized, and LinkedIn, and and they're doing this, and the algorithm, and all of those. And my point of view, what I sort of wanted to bring to that discussion, and the op-ed was about that, is that the algorithm only knows what it knows, right? It knows what it's being trained on, and if what it has is a majority of male data, then it thinks that is the majority of the population. So, getting women engaged, is a necessity, because then they will start producing the data. So we have a skewed system, and we cannot really blame the LinkedIn for that matter, right? No. We cannot blame the algorithm. And so we all need to engage with this. I mean, to me, it's not about men being evil or not wanting to engage the women or something like that. I mean, we just have a situation here that we need to change, and we need to change it especially because we're talking about artificial artificial intelligence that is having such a big impact on our society.
So what do you feel when I say that, when they say that they trained AI on the entire internet, history of the internet? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, but I mean, that's a problem, right?
Who made that internet?
Exactly.
Who wrote everything on Reddit? Right?
Exactly.
Right. And
exactly.
I spoke to, I think it was Nandan Molakara about this as well, that most of the internet is Western as well.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, so China can make an AI model. But look, if it has to be competitive, it will be Western.
Yeah, and we are seeing this in a lot of different areas now where it's really a problem because the data we have is male. And when you're looking at healthcare, for example, you have examples already. AI is being integrated. It's fantastic. I love it. I very often would say that I'd rather have an AI look at my data and pictures or whatever, than a GP. But honestly, when we're then looking at diagnosing and all of that, it's missing out on women because it only has male data. And we're seeing those examples now, and we're seeing it also in recruitment.
It's like,
right?
You remember, Tony, if you remember a couple of years back, there was this image recognition problem where it couldn't recognize black faces, right?
Yeah.
Or colored people.
Yeah.
Because
women and colored. Yeah.
It's like, that's not a person. It's like, let's go.
I know.
But it always reminds me, right, that we also have, to be the whole of psychology mainly based on very affluent white students answering the professors' queries for studies, and that's a whole field of healthcare as well, right? Yeah. Psychology, just based on such a small data sample.
Such a small data sample, and I just think that we cannot. I mean, we are at a point in history now where there is no reason. I mean, why we cannot allow that to continue.
So are you actually saying that you're calling connected women in AI, but could it also just have been connected people in AI?
And basically
democratic AI.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we had a long think about what we call it, and the online platform that we just launched is actually unnamed yet because we want to take both AI and women out of it. Because technology that this problem will repeat itself, but maybe in another area, after AI. But this is about.
But you can't have a room without power either, right?
No, and this is about diversity. I mean, it is about diversity, and it's about diversity in all its aspects. It's just women. It's the largest minority represented, and it's easier to measure and track the change that's happening on women, and that's why we sort of honed in on women as a focus point to start with. I will also claim that when we have women. Diversity on gender, the other diversity markers tend to be better as well.
But they do, right? And that was exactly my point, right? Saying that there's power in every room, there's bias in every room, and no matter what you choose, you'll choose a bias. You chose to say untitled, if you had no name, maybe you would have gotten no traction either, right? So there's always a choice, right, in anything you do, and I just think it's very important that the discussion can keep on going and not be killed by other markers. So oh no, but you're more oppressed than me, then we can't talk. And you said minority. I'm like, some would say women are not in the minority, but they're misrepresented.
Yeah,
right?
It's not a minority, absolutely, but a minority in
power. Yeah, but exactly
in this space, right?
Yeah, so there's just all of these different these perspectives to it, right? So now back to that awful question. I'm a white affluent man in AI, and I had written down a question to you saying that what am I allowed to say? Am I even allowed to talk here, right? But then a good colleague of mine said, don't say that. That will make you sound like an old angry fart. So I said I wouldn't, and I wanted to say that. I wanted to ask that question actually to include the old angry fart in this conversation with you. But now I chose not to ask that question. So I didn't ask it. so I'm asking you.
Very clever.
Very clever. I'm like very high IQ. I'm a white, smart, affluent man in AI. But so I'm going to ask instead, and maybe I think that will actually make you able to answer both questions. How do I empower your organization even more as a white affluent man in AI?
I think that we always say that men are very welcome. I recently actually did a post on LinkedIn because after I was speaking at an AI conference in December, and afterwards there's like, 2 or 3 men who come up and say, am I allowed in there? And of course, and I think that it's about men understanding that, this is not about values, right? It's not about women having better values than men, or women being more clever or something. It's about representation. And we're all interested in representation. And whether you are a CEO and you're thinking about your bottom line, then you are interested in representation because you get better products out of it. You have a larger talent pool, as we just discussed, right? So there's more resource to pull from, and there's lots of studies saying that innovation is better with the diversity behind it. But also, if you're a father, right, and you have daughters, you're also interested in this space, and then we are moving it more.
I saw studies the other day. Someone saying that if you're the father of a daughter, you're more inclined to hire. Yeah,
if your firstborn is a daughter, you're more inclined to hire women.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, right?
Yeah.
But I think we need to start thinking about this in that way when it comes to AI.
I'm a white affluent man in AI with 3 boys. So what does that mean?
Oh, wow.
I'm a lost case.
You really need this podcast.
This podcast ends now.
Make sure they have some girlfriends. Fast.
Yes, exactly. And I hire those girlfriends. That would be weird. But
yeah. We're going off track now.
But I think, and some would ask you, and I need to ask you as well, right? Because you're sort of dodging it, and I also get that, and I agree with the representation, right? But that is also it's a difficult sell. Representation, because that's a power. No, but it's power that isn't, focused. It's non-essential, right? So what are you doing for me? Why are you, it becomes, a discussion about structuralism. It becomes almost like Foucault saying something, but where is the money there, right? What is this, right? So what is, what's missing from the AI discussions is we need to add more women. Someone will ask you that. Some people will ask that. So now I'm doing that again. I'm taking the old man fart and I'm asking his question on behalf of him. I don't mean anything of what I just said. Well, what are we missing in the discussion? You get my point. What are we missing?
I get your point. And I don't know if we're really missing it anymore. Actually, what we have been missing, and I think we're starting to address very much, is the fact that right now, at this point in time, our challenge is not the technology itself, right? It's the application of it. Right now, the companies are really struggling with the anchoring that will shape the value. I mean, the business transformation.
Yeah.
And that's where all organizations struggle, right? The adoption with the trust, the behavioral change that's necessary, and the work, sort of everyday work integration.
Yeah.
That's where we're struggling. And when we're looking at the skill set needed for that, and I mentioned that in the beginning as well, here, we have change management, we have communication, we have HR, we have project management, all of the skill sets where women are not stronger, but typically strong and very well represented. And so I think we're missing from the AI discussion the fact that, whether it's a gender or it's a capability, that it doesn't really matter. It's just that we need those capabilities to succeed with this.
So that's interesting. You're taking the bias and what's the structure of things, the way things are structured, saying that women are typically change managers and project managers, and they're not involved in AI. Perhaps that's why your adoption is failing. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe,
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
I like that. And I actually like that.
But because we need to understand that, and I also think it's quite interesting when we're looking at AI, where you're going to succeed the best in your job. I mean, we have gone from you're an AI specialist, you really understand the technology, to your subject matter expert, the transformation that we're looking for, the business transformation, it will come from subject matter experts that understand AI, not AI experts that try to understand subject matter.
To understand subject
right?
matter. Yeah.
This is where the real good use cases will come from. So it's just become so much broader.
You can't. I wrote down a note while you were speaking as well. You can't afford estrangement, basically.
Yeah,
that's the point, right?
Yeah.
But I also think that, and of course, it's a dangerous thing to say as well. But I like the way you're phrasing the inherent bias of the system, saying that we need that half that you think you're missing, because this can very easily become, an academic discussion.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the fear. That's the fear of saying we made an AI woman organization. Okay, so are we just in academia now? Or are we still in?
Yeah.
Or is this about selling more licenses to women? Okay, that's also quite profane, but you get my point, right?
Yeah, and sometimes because, and back to. What
this
you
is bridging
said,
between the bias and the future.
Back to this space that you don't want to enter, right? In this minefield. But actually I'm sometimes taking the gender a little bit out of it, just because it tends to become a sensitive area.
Yeah.
And we can talk a lot about learning profiles, and somehow that's a little bit safer than talking gender.
Yeah.
What we're seeing is that women typically have a different learning profile than men, but it's not a gender-driven thing. You may have men with a different learning profile as well. But if we sort of generalize, and once we start talking about learning profiles, it's a different thing. You don't talk about men versus women. You're talking about how do you learn, how do you upskill, how do you take in new information, and here, I think...
Was that on the drawing board, connected learning profiles in AI? No?
It was actually Margrethe Vestager who talked to us about that after we just got started, but I really took that in because I think it's so strong. Because basically what we're looking at as well is when we're talking education and when we're talking, why is it that women, they don't just, jump into it in the same manner as men? Well, it's because they may need different learning structures. And what we have now is learning structures that are made by men for men. Again, it's a system thing. It's not because men want to do something for themselves. It's just systematic. Because, and what I think we have been able to tap into is a little bit by luck maybe, but we were creating something that worked for us. So where you have shorter learning increments, right? So these micro segments of learning and, you space it out and we just structure it a little bit differently than what you may find in a 3-day upskilling program in a company or something like that, where women may check out because they have a different profile from the man, and they're like, well, but I also need to shop for the dinner or pick up my kids or whatever. And regardless of how interested I am in this technology and upskilling myself here, I just cannot take a deep dive for 3 weeks and go to MIT and, I need to learn in a different manner. So there's that aspect of it where we're talking learning profiles and it becomes less sensitive, right?
Yeah, but it's still, it does. But at the same time, you're also just hiding, an essentialistic view of, typical women learning profiles behind the word. So, but
I don't think we should be equal. That's not it. We just have to stop making it. It's not a. I just don't think that it's a gender aspect that we need to focus on here. This is
the vastness, right? Isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's the representation that I think is interesting. The gender part, it's the representation that's interesting, and again, on a lot of different areas, right? Not only gender. So,
because I just wrote down, that the challenge, is that you're bridging the bias failure, but also the bias, what you could say, the bias. Potency, that there's something that as typically women, you speak about the things that the way it's failed, but you're bridging the saying that women will typically do and women will, so we want to make sure that the women change managers and probably may work on this, right? So there's a failure of where they've sort of landed but we can enable that, but also saying that there's not necessarily a failure, but there's
a bias, asymmetry.
That's a structure.
Structural asymmetry, right? And also saying, but there's also some potency in saying that women have a different way of learning that can actually be. So you're saying both of those things, and then from that, into this democratic representative future where. Okay, so in that future, are we still talking about gender there?
I hope not.
No, right?
We used to say that our success, if we are successful, we don't exist anymore. This is not about, it shouldn't matter. But I'm sure that it will, because once we have gender equality, then there's going to be other diversity measures. That's unfortunately just how things are, right? But we can make it better. We can do better.
Yeah, exactly. I think I remember, Thomas Hildebrand saying that on the podcast, that there's no technology system without bias, right? And I also had Serge Belongi making very clear, the bias in the data as well.
Yeah.
People are forgetting that, right? In general, does this have a larger focus? And is this maybe also the technology mandate that your organization is imposing, that we speak more about the data sets?
We have to speak more about the data sets because, that's where the artificial intelligence is coming from, right? And people need to understand that it's about the data, and that's also why I entered this LinkedIn conversation as I did, because we need to start talking about not injustice, but data. Where is it coming from, and what can we do about it? And I feel that we are going to.
What can we do about it?
Well, we can encourage, as a man, you can encourage the women to engage. And as a woman, you can be more curious, and engage, because I think the time where we were questioning whether, AI is here to stay has gone. So now it's something that we just need to live with or adapt to, or take... maybe get the best out of. I would hope, and getting the best out of it, we can only do that if we engage, and that gender gap that we have with less people in this industry, or less women in this industry or in this field, and less women using it. That gap is getting wider and wider every day, right? Because it's exponential. So we can never close it if we don't act now.
No, but it is also make me think about men, sitting there on the internet trolling, right? Because I think the average troll is a man.
I'm not gonna have an opinion about that. Now you don't
dare have an opinion anymore. Well, I don't know. Maybe men are more, in these internet forums than women are, and women are more in the spoken word with people. I don't know. It seems that might be I'm going to say, women should go out and be more on Reddit. Should you be more on Reddit and be, angry or?
No, I don't think anybody should be angry at anybody. Actually, no. I think that. There is, right? But what is happening is that women tend to engage better. They learn better and they learn faster. And the reason they do that is because they're more motivated and they put a lot of fear aside when they're in a room with only women. I think that's something fundamentally wrong in that, right? It shouldn't be like that. No. But I also think we just need to recognize, okay, it might be like that now, and that's something that needs to be solved, but representation will solve it. Right? A lot of the reason why it's like that is because women in this field has been used to being a minority and being, everything that you just said, so time will change that. It's the engagement, it's the representation will change that. And then, of course, the men can help accelerate it by not being biased and all of that. But I think right now, what we need to do is look at, okay, what works now? How is it that we give that confidence? Because that's what it is. And we used to talk about a lot the confidence gap rather than a competence gap. A woman does not lack competences, and also don't need any different skills than men. It's the confidence that separates them, where men tend to be more technology confident and women not so much.
Yeah, exactly. So you're basically asking for, the connected women in AI is, and I'm saying what it is, but it isn't. But I'm not saying anything.
Go on.
No, but it's more. It's basically pioneers, right? You're making a room for pioneers. Like back in the 1800s, there were this royal expedition. I don't know, all these male foras where men were like, oh, let's go explore the natural world or go to the polar regions or something like that. So they were like encouraging each other. So in some sense, the connected women in AI is about encouraging you to go into these fora and not feel strange, because you'll be in male worlds, right? They will be in male worlds, and I've heard that as well. Someone say that it's really uncomfortable sometimes to be the only maybe pretty woman in a room of 30 IT engineers.
Whether you're pretty or not, I don't even think that's a factor, right?
No, but it is also, because then you have all these, you have toxic masculinity, and you have lots of that, and I'm not going to hide that away either.
Might worsen it, yeah.
Yeah, so if I say there's 30 guys, I bet there's at least 2 of them who's going to be unpleasant at some point, right? Statistics, I think. I don't have to, but I think so. And so you need to say that we have your back. We're here for you, and we'll help you be strong enough. It's like going to the church so you can be filled by the Holy Spirit before you go become a missionary somewhere, right?
I typically, I don't think of us as pioneers. I think of us as holding space for all women and making sure that the pioneers are visible to them, right? So what we want to do is provide this community where everybody are welcome, the men as well that want to make a change here, but the women feeling that they're not alone. And that community thing is very strong, and having those role models, those pioneers, the women that actually stepped in and made a difference and don't raise their hand so much, because that's another thing with women. They don't put themselves forward so much on stages and all of that. So we're getting so many conference organizers. I mean, I don't think there's an AI meeting in Denmark, I would claim. I mean, there probably is, because there's a lot. But anyway, a lot of conference organizers come to us and ask us, do you have speakers that you can represent or recommend, because we would like to have representation on stage. And we can, because there are many women, but they don't necessarily put themselves forward, and they don't necessarily respond to the conference organizer, but they respond to us, and then they go on stage, because they also understand that it's important that they're there, so that they can be seen and they can motivate others, and they can give that encouragement and sense of security or confidence that the women out there that are being uncertain, is this for me? Am I good enough? Am I hurting the world? And all of those things that we see from women, all of those concerns that are the barriers for them engaging.
So that's what I wanted to get to. Maybe I was a little bit more passive about it, but basically like a badge, or saying like I'm in this community. I'm enabled now. I can speak up. I think I heard that Mensa, for instance, the Organization for Highly Intelligent People, is not really. Some people say it's an arrogant organization and all that, or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what people say, but the thing is that that it's been a huge enabler of a hidden intellectual group. Because a lot of people a lot of those that enter into Mensa in the US had bad jobs or had no education, and then when they took the test and they got into Mensa, they were suddenly enabled to say, "Hey, I belong. I'm actually a swan. I'm not supposed to be in this duck pond or something, right? And so they did something with their life because of that, and they spoke up and they took an education, changed their course. Is this the same effect that you hope to have? And
look, I'm not gonna make any claims here. I will just say that there's something that I have observed. So we are driven with a fantastic group of volunteers. Right, that's how we operate, and when you go and do volunteer, I mean, the time you decide to volunteer is very often when you're out of a job, because you have the time and I want to engage and all of that. And we just see that volunteering with us, but it could be with any organization, it will give, I mean, the requirements for AI experience and knowledge are so small right now, right? And especially because we're missing talent, that having volunteered for 3 months in Connected Women in AI is now almost making you an expert, right? And it puts you ahead. And I think that's what you're referring to, is this this is not what we are trying to do, but what we are trying to encourage is obviously our volunteers, they have access to all of our upskilling and, they engage and they see and all of that. So they do build skills.
They build skills.
And that's also what we are doing also with the platform that we launched, right? Because, there was thousands and thousands of women, and we're doing physical events, and we are continuing to do physical events. But we're like, how do we hold space for all of these women? We cannot do physical events for 7,000 people at the frequency that's necessary for you to upskill in the space. So what do? And that's why we went online and said, okay, we basically need to do something for the masses where we can make sure that we cater for all of those women that are interested now in upskilling. And then it can be a combination of community and that's what we are going to build into it over time, more and more of the community elements. Now we launched an MVP because we wanted to see is there a demand for this? Will people use it and so forth? But
this is upskilling, right? This is upskilling, and I get that.
Well, it's also community, right? And it's a role models. And it's inspiration. So here, what we're doing is that we're featuring, career stories. Yeah. We are featuring, of course, there's articles. There's all the role models and visibility that they need in there. There is the whole community. You can connect with other women. You can start. We are having now 10 expert committees in our organization where the women are starting organizing in verticals because we got so broad, and now we have the expert committees that AI in finance, AI in education, and then they come together and do stuff where there's more sparring, more network, right? So all of this is evolving.
But also just, having the badge saying that I am now in Connected Women
in AI. You want a badge? Yeah.
No. But
I'll get you a badge.
I'd love a badge, by the way. But,
you can be a Connected Woman in AI. I'll give you that badge, and I'm expecting you to wear it.
But that was not... Sorry, that was not why
I love it.
But I love it. If you get a badge, please send me one. But and I'll feature it and all that. But my point was, if you say, it's like, if you were a janitor, or nothing wrong with being janitor, or if you had some job, right? But you found out you were actually in Mensa, and then you said, now I need to speak up. I need to do more, right? So suddenly being part of Connected Women in AI, because it's not necessarily about having those skills. That's what you said earlier. A lot of women are very skilled, but don't dare speak up and are not being seen for that. I don't dare to go into those. But if you're suddenly those areas, right? But if you're suddenly in Connected Women in AI, that's also okay. Now I am both empowered to speak and I can learn how to speak, but I'm also mandated to do it because I'm part of Connected Women in AI. You get my point about what I'm trying to say here.
I get your point, and it's
you're in the polar exploration group, right? You have to go to the polar regions.
Do you know what? It's amazing. We are starting. We had yesterday our kickoff meeting for a project that we have wanted to get going for 6 months. It's called 100 Women in AI, and it's about role models, visibility, and all of that. And a big part of the conversation that we've had in conceptualizing and planning is exactly that. So mandating, so if you're one of the 100 women, you're also mandated as a person, and we're even looking at can we get the companies, right, the organizations that they come from, also mandated, to actually go and pay it forward or pass it forward or whatever you say, so
so be like a
absolutely
a beacon.
We are encouraging all of our community to share all the time. We are having they're not very good at doing it, actually, to be quite honest. I mean, we're putting out surveys and asking everybody to share, because we need to go into the furthest corners, and there's still a little bit of hesitation, which is why we need to do what I'm doing right now, right? Be in the media, is create awareness about this, not only amongst the women's and make it their task, but it's also the men's task.
The funny thing is, right, in my I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because in the first many episodes of my podcast, I had a lot of men. Yeah. And then lately I've had a lot of women, actually. And I've sort of, and that was not, initially, maybe it was a little bit intentional. I said, I have this is biased the wrong way. And I need to sort of change that. And I philosophize a lot about what was actually going on as well. Also because a lot of the men were like open to discuss whatever, right? And go anywhere. Because men are like, let's just, freestyle it and we'll go, I don't know, full on ADHD for 1.5 hours, Where women, some of the women guests were more like controlled, or I've also seen they want to know, and it'd be. I've actually thought a lot about this. I also thought about, why don't I have video? I don't want to have video because I want people to think about what they look like. I want to hear what you're saying, your thoughts. I want it to be sort of like a room without gender and without looks and without all that. It's but now it's just it's natural. There's just women coming on the show and we're talking about it. The thing about it just made me think about this. What you said, like speaking up, talking whatever. That I sort of feel like I've seen that also, and now people can go back and look at the episodes. But in some parts of the show, that it's easier when I ask a man a question, he just goes blah 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 blah. I'm fully assured of what I'm saying. When I ask a woman, she'd be like, "Give you a short answer because I'm unsure of what you're getting at, and I don't want you to think I misunderstood you." You know?
Yeah.
And it's just a sense I have that that's a thing, right?
No, but this is what you see. You see somebody, and again, we were talking a little bit about the HR systems and what is happening there, and here there's an area where AI may be able to actually help. But what we are seeing behavioral is that men will say, there's 10 requirements, I tick 3 of them, I'm good, I apply.
Yeah, exactly.
Women, they will say, there's 10 requirements, I tick 9 of them, I'm not going to apply.
Exactly. So why are we making all these requirements for jobs, right?
Yeah.
We're actually scaring off a lot of people who are like, and I've discussed this with a lot of my friends, female friends as well. Like, you definitely fit this job. Just go apply. Yeah. They don't mean that much. Doesn't matter. This is what's important. Apply. No, but I don't think I fit. And men will be like, oh, swagger. Let's just do it.
Yeah, and this is where. This has been happening for a long time, and we talk about imposter syndrome and all of those things. It's been happening. There's nothing new in that. What's new?
Who do you think you are as well, right? Who do you think you are? Like with women, a lot of that with women, right?
Exactly. But what's new is that now we're applying this situation to artificial intelligence that has such a big impact on society. And so we need to do something more drastic. Right? We need to do something more concrete. We need to stop talking about it and basically change things, because we cannot allow it, as I said. None of us can allow it, not for our business and not for our daughters and sisters and mothers and whatever, right? So I think there is a shift here where it's becoming more.
So women are going to be more like men, just say I can do it when they can't, or are men going to be more like women, say, oh, no, maybe I shouldn't apply for this job?
No, I think that the hiring organizations need to take this into consideration. I think that we need to have the awareness, the consciousness about how men and women are different, and not just say that, I'm going to evaluate applications with the same criteria. And this is exactly what's going wrong when we talk about AI and HR, because we already see that AI will take the female CVs out of the process. They might be super qualified, but it thinks again, back to the algorithm, it thinks that you need to talk like a man, right? So then they filter it out, and then there's bias in the HR process. And of course, all of this, as we know it, it's being repaired. But I think that what we need to acknowledge is that we are not supposed to all be the same. On the contrary, we just need to make sure that we don't create systems that assume that we are all the same, because the data it's being trained on is
but some said, I think in the early episode, or maybe it was another conversation I had, I can't remember right now, so sorry that you can always you can have a machine, an AI that will evaluate your applications, right, and it can be biased based on the data it's been trained on, but that bias is actually sort of out in the open, so you can correct it and say never do that to women or something. You can actually say that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't have the system, then it becomes in our heads.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, and I think that's also why some companies or some hiring managers have trouble with these algorithmic HR system, because they need to put their biases into it. And no one wants to say, I don't want to hire Indians, I don't want to hire women. No one wants to say that out loud. But you can just say no, not.
Hopefully, nobody wants to think it.
But some people are like, no, I'm not. Some people will do that and say, oh, not qualified, not a cultural fit, or you can say whatever the crap to say. I don't want to hire that person, when it's just you deciding. But the machine, you have to have transparency and know why it made the decisions.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to hire Indians, you have to tell the machine never hire an Indian.
Yeah.
But also, if there is a bias in the machine, you can always say correct it, right? Isn't that better then? Is the machine not better than the culture? Or
I think that again. I think that it can become way better. I really do. I think that we just need to be very conscious of what it is that we're solving for, right? And you don't know what you don't know, and this is why So these biases, they appear, and then we solve for it. So, and great. It is great.
Yes, all the things you've said that are good about women, they will maybe not be there in the future because we solve for it.
Yeah.
So maybe women will be.
Yeah. So I think the systems are awesome.
Yeah.
I love AI. I think that it's got so much potential. It's making, our lives so much better. At least make my life better. I just think that we need to know what we solve. I mean, we need to acknowledge the fact that we don't necessarily have a situation today that is balanced. So we need to be conscious of not recreating bias that's already existing, and do it on a larger scale, because that is what's going to happen with AI, right? It emphasizes everything and it does it on a larger scale, just like it's going to narrow everything in. So if you have narrow perspectives, then you also have much more narrow, outcome, right?
So, but AI is, this big bias machine, right? It is the big data machine. It's the best practice machine. It's not the leading. It's not the future. It's the best practice machine. So, and there's lots of voices missing. Aren't we all missing in AI?
Yeah, but we have to start somewhere,
right?
We're
all there, and we're all not there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like there's so many, like elderly, like kids, like low-income in countries, like me being, I'm sure, and I'm not going to say what maybe, but I'm sure I also am diverge on a lot of different metrics.
But you know what? It may not be consciously.
No.
It's an unconscious bias that you have, right?
But should you then make connected black women in AI, connected elderly women in AI, connected girls in AI, connected poor women in AI? Should you do all that? Are you going to do all that?
There's a lot of missing voices here that we need to see. And again, as I said before, gender is just one dimension of it, right? It's just one that's easy to observe or easier to observe and measure, I think, again, because of the sample size that we have. But so I also think that, if we can succeed with gender equality here, I think there's a better chance that we'll succeed with diversity in all the other areas.
Yeah.
So it's just a starting point. It's it's not the end goal that we have gender diversity measures, or gender equality. That's not the end goal. It's just the starting point for starting to get these things more balanced, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I actually, Katrine, I think we've been around this topic a lot now. I think it's been a really great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, likewise.
And I think we've also gone places that I found unpleasant, and I hope
you squirmed a bit in your chair there.
I did a lot of times actually. And I was like, why am I doing that? I'm typically never doing it, but I'm like, oh, why am I saying this? And should I say this? And what am I? But because I'm whatever people might think, I'm actually extremely self-aware all the time.
But you know what? I think it's fantastic that you say it, that you are, because there might be a lot of men that actually feel uncomfortable addressing this because they're afraid of being called out as something they don't want to be, and they just don't know how to, go about this.
Yeah, I think that a lot of men will also feel like it's our fault, right? And we've also discussed that a little bit. I've mentioned some toxic masculinity and stuff. There are some men that are at fault for things, right? But there's also just a lot of men who are in the same system as the women.
Do you know what? There's also toxic women.
Yes.
I mean, so
that is, the Bourdieu. I want to get to that. The barracks of Doxa, right? Where he described this cultural environment. I think it was North Africa or something back in the 70s or 60s, where when a woman went outside of the norm, it wasn't the men who corrected her. It was the women, and they were very harsh. Why are you, that you're being a bad mother? Why are you coding and working so late? And you're being a bad mother now, right? And when a man is just like, oh, you're doing well, you're earning lots of money, well done indeed, right? And that still exists. Are you addressing that, by the way?
I think that's great input, and that's exactly what we need, right? I mean, the men addressing the men.
Yeah. Yeah, but also being like, men being, men you're saying, go back to just the whole career woman problem, the career mother, right?
Yeah.
That's still a bias.
I think that
and in Denmark, maybe less than in the rest of the world, right? But your global organization, this must also be a really big inhibition globally, that if you ask women to take a serious career in AI, but they're mothers as well.
I know, but the men are fathers. I just.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in this
but
whole.
But this is the paradox.
Man, you're opening up a new discussion. You were about to wrap up, and now we're talking about maternity and paternity leave.
But I love it. But I think that's interesting, right? I think it's super interesting because I think it's part of the way that men can just go on and be like, oh, I'm a successful job, I don't have to, right? And as a father myself, I feel like I'm missing out if I do that. So there's all the things to that, right? And I'm also, my first kids, my wife took most of the maternity leave.
But again, I think it's. I mean, there are women that prefer to not have a career in AI. That does not mean that they don't use AI. I just want to say that our ambition is not to get everybody to have a career in AI. What we're saying right now is that we need more women with a career in AI, and then we need all women to start contributing and generating the data that all these systems are built on, and have an understanding of how is this technology being used, because it's going to be necessary if at some point they want to go into a career. But in your everyday life, it's giving you just as many time savings and upsides as in a professional life. So I would argue that everybody need to use this technology regardless of whether they want a career or not. You can also find men that would like to be there with their kids and not necessarily have a career. I think that what we just need to do is have a system that allows, that does not, predetermine that
your participation,
that the woman stays at home.
No, yeah.
I don't think any women, and this is the thing, a woman should not feel bad about having a job and a baby.
No.
Right? No. But you are being, and there's still that sort of little bit of, I mean, and in Denmark, it's not as bad as in many places
Most
in
of
the
the rest of
world,
the world, I
right?
think, actually,
And then you're being judged a little bit, and you're right. And of course, that needs to stop. And again, it needs to stop. The men also need it, and you need to consider as a society if you want the change, right?
Yeah.
And if you want it fast, do you need to regulate it, right? Do you need to force equal leave, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But there's so many.
Do you need quotas? What about the boardroom? Do you need do you need to force quotas? All of that, to a long extent. Are you saying that wide extent? Yeah. I think that it's probably you should regulate more because we know as human beings how long it takes to change a habit. And there's a lot of what we're seeing here and that what we're working against that are habits.
Yeah, I'm tentatively agree, right? Because if it's asymmetric, if it's skewed, you have to fix that.
Exactly. And I think that when we are talking about the only constant, I think it becomes such a big thing because I will
ask you that question in a moment. So don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
Go ask it.
I'm ready for it. I will ask it. Just wait a second. Okay?
I mean, just to finish my sentence, you have to ask.
I've never had anyone be so eager to answer that question, and that it should be a woman. That's
now you. What are you doing now? You cannot say that.
I'm saying that you're so.
You cannot act surprised that a woman.
I am the man hosting this show. No. Okay, this is going off right. But I think that the things you're saying, is obviously the participation. Your voice is valued here, and also saying that you can be feminine while you're in AI. You can work with AI and not lose your femininity, and you can be a mother, and you can be all those things. And and in essence, what comes out of all this conversation, even though there's also been some essentialism in what we've been speaking about, what is the woman, but that's because that's the old biases that could change. What it all comes down to, and what we've said so many times, is the representation, right? The participation. That's it, right? You can participate. You should participate. We need you to participate, right?
Absolutely.
Good. And now we can get to the final question. Sorry about that.
Because I was about to go off on another string, but then we're never going to end this
that's also
conversation.
Perfect. We can also do that.
Okay. Ask me the question.
So, Katrine, what is the only constant?
So, linking it, I mean, this is why we got there, because I opened it up a little bit. I think that the only constant when we're looking at technology shifts, I'm trying to stay within the frame of the podcast here, right? So when we're looking at major technology shifts, there is a constant that is a very short window of opportunity, right? There is a window where direction is still open, where people don't have the norms yet for how the technology should be used, who is going to do the experiments, how decisions are made, that period where behaviors are much more or matter much more than the structure. But what is happening, and this window, this is all great, but what we see and what I see repeatedly is that the window is closing, and it's closing much faster than we expect, right? So that means that the early practices have a tendency of becoming defaults, not because they were intended so, but simply just because, the governance tend to form around what's already happening, right? You don't plan for it, but, habits just tend to turn into systems. Then it becomes the truth, what the early adopters, they did. And when that happens, then changing direction is just becoming slower. It's more political, it's more expensive. And what is particularly challenging when we're looking at technology is that it's moving super fast, right? So if you say sort of the human readiness, as we were talking about, getting humans in the whole adoption space, right? The human readiness moves way more slowly, and you're having that sort of gap between speed and readiness, and there's a lot of the tension that we see around AI today that is caused by that, I think. But the constant that I would call out is that window of opportunity, and it goes back to, we're still at an early stage, and we still have time to sort of solve the structural problem that is the lack of diversity in AI. And that is also why this moment matters. There is a sense of urgency. We cannot wait for long, because then the structures are set, and all of those systems that we don't want, they have just been shaped around a situation or a world where men were dominating, not because they wanted to dominate, but just because they jumped in faster, right? So I would say, the window of opportunity, and then call out. So this is exactly what we are trying to address, right?
That's a really great constant, I think, and it's also a novel one. And I always like that when I've had lots of change. Change is the only constant. But I think in some ways, the window of opportunity is, because I also heard you say another thing here in your constant. You said also that entrenchment is a constant, that things become the norm, become the default, right?
Yeah.
But you took the euphemistic view. And the reason why you made the startup and the community Connected Women in AI is to say that there's a window of opportunity before this entrenchment, right?
Yeah.
So there's two ways of viewing this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And you chose the positive one.
Of course.
Let's change the system.
Of course.
And that is exactly the energy that I see.
You cannot make it.
That's also the energy you hear in the room with me, right?
Well, you're not going to make any change, I think, with if you're being pessimistic. No. I think we need to take the optimistic approach if we want change to happen, and especially if we want it to happen fast, and address it. And this is what we're doing, much more like, a movement, and not necessarily like an uproar or, female, battlefield or something like that. That's not it. It's just like, and both me and Barbara, when we started because we were like, whoa, look at this technology. This is awesome. Look at all it can do for us. We both have ADHD as well, so actually we love it. So it was like, oh, wow, new shiny thing, but we were like, oh, wait, where are all the other women? Come join, this is great. This is going to change the world. So, and that's the spirit that we still go to this. I mean, to the other women, there's nothing to be scared of. There's nothing to be, there's lots of things to be scared of, and there's lots of things to be concerned of. But the best way to address them is to know what you're dealing with.
Find the window of opportunity. And I think this episode has been about change, and the only constant is change, and all that, in a much more, a much more structural, much more essential, much more societal way than I think I've had in many other conversations on the podcast. So I've been really happy to have you here, and thank you so much for having joined me to discuss this change.
You said you were going to ask me about my own constant.
I did?
Yeah.
But I asked you about what's the only constant?
That's a general constant.
What is your only constant? What's your personal constant? Okay, whenever I try to shut this up, I open it up. I usually open it. Okay, what is your personal constant,
No,
Katrine?
I wanted to...
Katrine, what is the personal constant?
I thank you so much for that question, Lasse. I really appreciate that. No, I think that what I wanted to attach to this, and see, on purpose, I didn't just go with it, because then you stop me and say, I'm going to ask the question, and then you didn't ask the question. No, but I think that the most meaningful change will typically happen before people feel ready. My dad, he told me this, actually. He was like, we need to move into our final home before we get too old to basically do it, right? And most people, they wait, and, so he was saying that, and it really sat with me, and I'm applying it to a lot of things. And also when it comes to technology, the change starts before you feel ready.
Yeah, so comfortable.
Yeah, and so when you're looking at that, and again, you can look at it from a leadership angle, stepping into a leadership role, launching a company or building companies, deciding how you spend your time, taking that leap of faith or whatever. I mean, changing stuff. I think that it's something that needs to happen before you feel like super comfortable and everything is clear. You have to feel when is something important and then act. And this is again what I'm trying to say to all the women. It may not feel completely clear or comfortable, but if we want change to happen, we need to act before that sort of clarity and confidence, full confidence sets in.
If everything's under control, you're not moving fast enough, some racing driver said, or what was it? Someone said on the show that if you can tell me what the answer is, then I'm already too late.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The confidence comes the confidence usually come after you start something, right? Yeah. That, is very often so. And whether that is having a baby or starting with AI,
But now I need to cut the confidence here, because we've definitely started this conversation, and it's and the confidence.
Shut up.
The confidence is growing and growing and growing. No, I love this conversation. I think, and we could have gone on, but now I've sort of said, I've had the only constant, I have 10 minutes ago, and now we need to. It's been terrific having you, and I've loved this conversation.
Me too.
Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.